So, how do you solve a cold case murder? Well, listen up, I'm going to tell you how. Welcome to the Law and Life. I'm attorney Patrick McGeehan. I am your best friend at your worst time. Last week I brought you the case of Teresa Filling. That's her up in the corner. The link to the video is over there. I'll put a card up. Anyway, in 1981, when she was 17 years old, she disappeared from Tampa, Florida. Was never heard from again until recently, in the last few years, they found the remains of some females in the yard, buried in shallow graves in the yard of a serial killer who is currently in prison in California, and they identified her. The Hernando County Sheriff's Office did a press release which generated several news articles telling about the closure of the case through DNA. And I just figured it was the typical, the police resubmitted the DNA and they got a hit, and that's how they found out her relatives and identified her. Until I started looking a little bit further, and I found it's a little bit more involved than that. And it's very interesting the way that this 40-year-old cold case was solved. And cold cases have always interested me, both as a homicide detective and a police officer and a lawyer. I had an aunt who was killed in Chester, Pennsylvania, a suburb of Philly, and it's a cold case. So I've always been interested in cold cases. I find them fascinating because they either involved a true whodunit, which is rare in murder, or they involve a person of interest who they just can't get enough evidence to charge on. It's usually one of those two. But this is a particularly interesting case because it was solved by a fairly new procedure called genetic genealogy. A lady, C.C. Moore, who is the chief genetic genealogist at Parabon Neolabs in Virginia, was able to solve this case. And the way she did it, she was able to zero in on relatives in just a few hours. She identified close relatives whose DNA profiles have been uploaded into two databases, GED match and family tree DNA. Apparently the genealogists don't have access to the two big ones, which is Ancestry.com and 23andMe, but they have these two smaller ones. So through that process, she was able to identify and investigate in a matter of hours, which is really fascinating. So Miss Moore was able to locate a close match to a second cousin and then find that second cousin's great grandparents who were tied to Teresa's great grandparents. She found the matches on the other side of Teresa's family tree and related both to her mother and her father, and she was able to narrow it down to the immediate family. She then began using public records and found a birth certificate in California. And she says in the majority of cases when she finds the match for far more distant relatives, third, fourth, or fifth. So this was pretty close that they found second cousins. She says it may take a matter of hours, it might take months, it might take years depending on the particular person's ancestral background and if their cousins have uploaded to GED match. Now, if she had access to 23andMe and Ancestry.com, I suppose it would be even easier, but apparently they don't give access for this type of reason for those two databases. Anyway, she goes on to say GED match is a genealogy database that allows users to upload their results from Ancestry and 23andMe. So they have to take the DNA samples they have in Ancestry and 23andMe and upload it in the GED match. Or another firm and opt out to law enforcement database. She explains. The other option is for people who wish to upload to aid DNA for genetic genealogy research is called family tree DNA. So there are two specific databases that they access to get into this. Since these profiles are much more specific than the government's CODIS database, CODIS relies on just 13 to 20 genetic markers. Genetic genealogy archives can include 700,000 to 800,000 per profile. Very, very interesting. If somebody's DNA is already in CODIS, they won't need us because they can already get that direct one-to-one match. And that's what you usually see when police resubmit DNA to the laboratory to have it run again in these cold cases. But that wasn't the case here. So she was able to run these down. It's really interesting. They use both, the genealogy databases and public records to run this stuff down. It's genetic genealogy. And she says it really relies on the citizen scientists who take part in finding these cases. She's interested in working on the John Bonet case. She says she's interested in working on the John Bonet case, but doesn't have any information from it, and the police haven't asked her to be involved. But very, very interesting aspect, one that I wasn't aware of, but certainly am now. And it's just another way to solve these cases. You know, with the advent of DNA and DNA profiles, uploading a lot of this information from cold cases when they do have DNA is just, an amazing way to solve the cases. It sure beats doing the recanvass, re-interview routine that was typically done before they developed DNA. So if you'd like to see more of this type of content, please let me know and I'll look for them. I always find these cold case and serial murder cases and just very, very interesting cases. And if you have any you want to send to me, please do that. If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. And until next time, I'll see you on The Law and Life.